Will you pray with me? Spirit of the living God, fall fresh on all of us. Open our ears and our hearts and our minds to the revelation of your good news on this day and every day. Amen. I distinctly remember the day when my daughter stopped taking naps. It was devastating. There was a season just when her napping routine was coming to an end when I would try my hardest to get her to sleep. Not because she needed it, but because I needed it. I'd lay her down beside me, darken the room, turn on some gentle music, and usually within a couple of minutes, or right around the time that I was starting to doze off, she would climb on top of me, open my eyelids, somehow force me awake. And always I was left utterly exhausted, desperately in need of rest. Rest is holy. Rest is sacred. Rest is necessary. Rest is central to the ministry of Reverend Tricia Hersey, a ministry that she started that she has named the Nap Ministry. And she has taken on the title of the Nap Bishop, an enviable role, I'm sure. Hersey started the Nap Ministry as a call to embrace rest as an act of resistance, primarily for people of color who suffer the brunt of a system which pushes their bodies to the brink. She travels around the country leading collective napping experiences, a time of intentional resting together with the purpose of rejuvenation and renewal. Now, while the Nap Ministry uses that language of a nap, Hersey is quick to point out that resting is so much more than that. She says that rest is anything that connects your mind to your body. Over the last 4 weeks, we talked at length about our church's mission statement and discerned together ways to live ever more faithfully into the calling that we have embraced for us as a church community. And to some of us, that might feel like a big ask, like a lot of work to do, especially when in every facet of our lives, we are asked to do more, to be more, to give more. More and more is demanded of us. It is easy to begin to feel like nothing more than a cog in a machine. The effect of grind culture in America and in every other capitalistic society has been that humans are being pushed to the brink of utter exhaustion. It is resulting in a devastating connection between our minds and our bodies and our spirits. So to this, Hersey pushes back, and she says, disrupt. Push back against that system that views you as a machine, because, friends, you are not a machine. You are a divine human being created in the image of God. And I couldn't agree more with Hersey. So today, you are invited to consider this question. How can I be useless to capitalism today? If you've ever felt guilty for resting when you've got dishes in the sink, or felt guilty for sacrificing time with your family to get a project at work completed, or if you've simply run yourself to exhaustion today, you are invited to just rest. There is no great mandate from the pulpit. There's no specific call to action for us today. There is indeed no need to do anything, only the call to be. Only the call to connect your mind and your body in rest. Fortunately for us, we have the wonderful Savannah in our church family to help us nurture that connection by leading us through some breathing exercises so that we might connect our minds with our body. I invite you then to sit and listen as the equally wonderful Sarah Nowlin shares with us her thoughts on rest so that we might find connection between her story and ours. Today, sit, listen, just be.
Thank you, Melody. I'd like to share that, ironically, I woke up yesterday morning unexpectedly sobbing to my husband about how burnt out I am and how I'm not getting enough rest and I've got to have more alone time. So while I'm the one up here teaching you this breath exercise today, it is certainly an ongoing practice that I have to come back to myself over and over again. So with that said, I'd love to invite you to find a nice, tall, comfortable seat and allow the eyes to close. And take just a moment, if you've got your legs crossed, we'll uncross the legs, bring the feet flat on the floor. Maybe just bring the hands to rest gently on the thighs or the knees. Take just a moment to transition from watching and listening to coming into your own body. Noticing the sensations of your own body. And on your next inhale, I'd like you to lengthen up through the spine, reaching the crown of the head up to the sky. And imagine that you are balancing a wide bowl of water on the crown of your head. We want to sit in a way that is strong and supportive of that bowl of water, but balance that with a bit of softness in the body, in a way that brings any ripples that might be flowing through that water into a place of stillness. Then we can start to allow our awareness to transition to the breath. And we'll start by simply just noticing the breath. We're not controlling or changing the breath. Just watching it, moving with it. Noticing how the simple act of bringing awareness to the breath is often all we need to do. The simple act of awareness in our daily lives is enough. When you're ready, I'll invite you to start mindfully lengthening your inhales and lengthening your exhales, finding a slow, soft release. Then I'll invite you to practice what we call the 3-part breath in yoga. So on your next inhale, I want you to imagine that you are drawing that inhale deep down into the belly, feeling the belly expand out like a balloon. And then you feel that breath spill up into the rib cage, feeling the rib cage expand. And then the breath spills up further into that center space just under the collarbones. And then you exhale in reverse. Release the air from the collarbones, and then the rib cage, and then the belly. Guiding yourself as we fill the whole torso with air on our inhale, and release every last drop of that air on our exhale. Challenging our mind to stay with the breath. A mini meditation, almost like waves in an ocean, flowing in and out of the body. Stay here for 2 or 3 more breath cycles. And then go ahead and release that control over the breath and just come back to your natural breath, flowing in and out of the body without thought or effort. And take just one more moment coming back into the body. And just notice how you feel. How did it feel to pause? How did it feel to come into the body? How did it feel to give yourself permission to do absolutely nothing but experience the breath for those few minutes? And when you're ready, I'll invite you to softly open the eyes, coming back into this space. Thank you.
I'm going to start with a quote from Tricia Hersey, who Melody mentioned before. From the time you were born, every system in this culture has been telling you that you are not worthy as a human being unless you labor and produce and do. You had no choice in that matter. This deserves your grief and your rest. You've been lied to. I think that if I had heard this message when I was in my first few years of parenting, I would have felt annoyed and even alienated. I would have thought, that's great for everyone else, but I don't have time to rest. Looking back, I truly wish I had spent more time allowing my dishes to accumulate and napping with my daughter. But I felt so inadequate as a young mom, 25 years old and navigating graduate school, a new marriage, and very limited finances. Matt and Lily and I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Chicago when Lily was born, and I felt so acutely aware of everything that I felt that I was not giving her that I dug my heels into making our tiny space the cleanest 700 square feet anyone had ever stepped foot in. I maintained excellent grades, stayed involved in church, and read parenting books and blogs while Lily napped. I was so afraid I was a bad mom that ever resting would have confirmed my worst suspicions about myself. I was lazy, unprepared, and setting my child up for a lifetime of disadvantage. Working hard was how I maintained an illusion of control over the very out-of-control situation of caring for a new human life. Signing up for every baked good opportunity at our church was one of my favorite ways to prove to myself that I was doing a good job in my new and unexpected role as a mom. I had no business signing up for baked good provision during that time in my life. I had more than enough going on without the burden of making anyone else's cupcakes. And I'm also not even good at baking. But taking on this unnecessary responsibility was an important way that I attempted to prove to myself and others that I was all of the things that I suspected I was not. Wholesome, naturally maternal, and without needs of my own. One night I had signed up to bring food to a Bible study, and I decided to make a 2-layer carrot cake. I can see Matt looking at me with alarm because he remembers this vividly. He hasn't read this yet. I was running late and needed to let the pans cool on the way there, and then ice the 2 separate layers once we arrived. I distinctly remember that tight feeling in my chest, my sense of frenzy and fear of disappointing others as I took the pans out of the oven and looked at the clock. I asked Matt to carry the pans for me, and when he did, he set them on top of each other, effectively ruining the bottom layer of cake. I know it was just a cake, which I believe I had made from a box mix, but I was absolutely enraged. My entire identity was wrapped up in that performance of hardworking femininity, and Matt had destroyed it. What would people think of me? I reached into the pan, grabbed a handful of cake in my fist, and I threw it at him. I yelled something to the effect of, "How could you be so careless? Don't you see how hard I'm trying?" But what I really meant was, I'm exhausted. I feel like going nonstop is the only way to ensure that people love me. I don't know how to maintain any semblance of sanity amongst the unrealistic pressures of motherhood. I need help. I need rest. I wish I could say that as I stood on a pile of hot cake crumbs, with tears running down my cheeks, that I had an epiphany about how my addiction to overcommitting myself was ruining my relationships, and I never signed up for any unnecessary snack duty, activism opportunity, committee, side hustle, or volunteer slot ever again. Unfortunately, say no is still a struggle for me. I haven't thrown cake since that day, but I still irritably gripe at my family to hurry up, feel like a disappointment at all times because I can't do everything at once, and stomp around the house cleaning at 9 p.m. because I am overwhelmed with shame, and sometimes decide to take it out on my family by furiously proclaiming, "I'm the only one who cleans around here." Embracing rest is hard for me, and I doubt I'm alone in that. The message of rest may feel inaccessible, even rude to you, if you're currently overwhelmed by the responsibilities of life. But I promise, you deserve to ask for help, to say no, to let things go undone, even if it disappoints other people. I hate to say it, but if you struggle to rest, you probably struggle to let everyone around you rest too. Your own unsustainable pace likely shows up in unreasonable expectations of others. Tricia Hersey writes, "If we're brainwashed by grind culture, then that shows up in how we treat ourselves and each other. What are the ways you push, ignore boundaries, and behave in an extractive, non-reciprocal way? A huge part of deprogramming is examining yourself quietly, getting real. Under capitalism, we are exploited and dehumanized through low wages, being expected to be on call to our jobs at all times, having little or no job security, and being or underinsured. The way that we have become desensitized to these conditions, as Hersey says, shows up in the way that we treat ourselves and each other. When we practice rest, we're faced with how unsustainable our collective pace of life really is for ourselves and our communities. Rest isn't just a self-care practice, it's a community care practice. When we see rest as integral to our lives, we see it as integral to others' lives, and we are compelled to create a world where rest is accessible to everyone, especially the people to whom it has historically been categorically denied. If rest is resistance, then why do we resist it? Sometimes I wonder if we fear reflection and quiet, or truly being present because of all the thoughts and feelings that might emerge if we weren't going at full speed at all times. When I pause to truly rest, which might look like going on a walk, having coffee with a friend, listening to music, napping on a Sunday afternoon, I am sometimes confronted with the pain, unanswerable questions, and uncomfortable memories that a frenetic pace of life allows me to avoid. I don't always want to examine myself quietly. I don't want to have time to think when so many of my thoughts are unpleasant. And yet, when I rest, for long enough to move through my initial discomfort, I begin to feel in touch with God through a sense of gratitude, contentment, and peace that a distractive life simply does not afford. Our productivity, our hard-workingness is so tied up in our personal sense of morality that we cannot imagine how we could embrace a slower pace of life and be good at the same time. So many of us are frantically trying to earn our salvation through a never-ending task list that we have no time to reflect, to pause, or to be with God. Our weariness has become a badge of honor to prove to ourselves and others that we are good enough. All the while, God is inviting us to rest. We are invited, and we are called to invite others into a new way of living, where good enough is irrelevant, where we have never been and will never be good enough, and yet are wholeheartedly accepted, loved, and deemed holy. I invite you to embrace rest as a practice this morning, as a gift from the God of mercy. Amen.
Thank you to Savannah and to Sarah for sharing with us. To close this time together, today is meant for resting. Tomorrow you'll go back to work, go back to whatever it is that maybe causes burnout. I hope that that isn't true. I hope that each one of us take today and morph it into a way of being that extends beyond these 24 hours. No one is being called upon to embrace a life of Rip Van Winkle, asleep to life around you. But you are being called to let go of things that disconnect your mind from your body. You are a sacred, holy, divine vessel. You are not a cog in anyone's machine. You are holy, and you are enough. Rest in the God who created you and loves you. Amen.